seeing people as people first, inclusion doesn't have to be just HR. It doesn't have to be just advocacy. It is an imperative, a strategy that we can all work on together.
The fact that they have to become sustainable organization, it has to start from the bottom of the pyramid, a sustainable workplace or sustainable workforce.
At the decision-making table, I think transgender needs a seat in the table. We need an opportunity and invitation to be seated there in the leadership role to reshape the people strategy, to redefine your company purpose on gender diverse workforce.
Hello, welcome to Trans Leadership and Sustainability. Be the first in Thailand that we talk about this topic. I'm Vithya Sangarun and I'm your host today. Got the fantastic four. I think this may be the first session that we did this in English, talking about diversity, transgender issues.
The Philippines has been branded as one of the most LGBT plus accepting countries in the world. I hear that a lot, but I don't agree with this. Rather, I think we are tolerant. As a highly religious country, people most often choose to stay silent about their positions that are not as inclusive as we'd like. While several hate crimes have also been experienced by our transgender siblings, workplaces have started catching up and companies have been starting to put skills first when it comes to hiring. These things also still persist at this time, and it's really our mission as corporates to change that in every local company that we are working with.
So, Ajan Nathawood, thank you, Kapun Jess. What do you think about the transgender visibility and job opportunities in Thailand?
We need to create this inclusiveness from the school level. Kids from school system has been excluded because they look different and they act differently, right? So they couldn't go into the next level. They might become, a top surgeon, a talented musician, but because you have tendency to be a trans woman or trans man, so we don't care so much about your education. And so how many times they have to face violence at family level or at school, or work in the gender equality commission. And, with my surprise, the majority of the cases came from schools, where teachers or professors just judge the students from the appearance. They really have issue with how students like to dress, how students like to put on makeup, which is not the major issue at all, but that really stopped them to be educated and to progress at the next level, which is career. And second, I think this day we start to see that the trend of the world of entrepreneurship. When you become entrepreneurs, when you become those who create your own success. I learned from Australia, for example, that they have got access to fund, technical support, and knowledge for LGBT who need to start new venture or create a new business. I think we have to think of many ways instead of thinking of going into the general formal job, going to the office per se. There are alternative work this day. And when we talk about human rights as access to job, we should also create environment for LGBTIQ, particular trans men and women, to be able to do what they need to run their own business and to be the entrepreneur. That's another option, in my opinion.
Have you been talking about possible approaches that we can make change for the better life for transgender people?
If the flower doesn't bloom, do we blame a flower or environment? I think we need to check a lot on the environment, right? If it doesn't bloom, we're going to check the soil, the light, the air, the humidity. So that's the reason why the flower grows. We are the flower, like a transgender. So if we don't grow, we don't sprout or bloom, we need to check, the soil as a family. It's of both fundamental. I was told by my family, the media, and the society, even my friend as well, that trans life is very hard. But why we need to define that life of transgender is hard? Opportunity is like an air. We need to breathe the opportunity from, job living in a society. Policy need to help us to live more easier. Same-sex marriage, partnership bill, gender recognition roles. I think this is all the ecosystem, that we need to move forward together. To stop asking transgender to be better and to do better, but start asking the environment to do better, to be better, to help us to grow the way that the flowers should be blooming in the way that they're supposed to be. What I noticed and what I learned is that current conversation on the careers and the gender equality in workplace are focusing on the differences between women and men rather than LGBT, especially transgender. I think gender concept is much more fluid than the manhood and womanhood. We see the focus on equal employment and pay for women, pushing women in management level, while transgender are not really in the agenda. So it's time to start putting the authentic gender diversity concept into a company agenda and turn it into a concrete policy, not only in the HR human resource corporate function, but in overall strategy as a business driver, not an option. And workforce transformation remains unmapped, because the voices from those most affected by inequality and bias are usually underrepresented at the decision-making table. I think transgender needs a seat in the table. We need an opportunity and invitation to be seated there, to reshape the people strategy, to recommend proper implementation, to guideline, to give an advice on the tracking record system to really see if it is work and how to adjust it. And that's how your workplace can be a better place, as we need a transgender participation and contribution in the leadership role to redefine your company purpose on gender diverse workforce to enable a positive change. I think this is we call authentic gender diversity empowerment, especially for trans. So remember, not only talking, not only do marketing campaign about transgender, but creating a tool, an environment where this could really make it happen.
There is no single answer, only because we are in this journey of inclusion in different levels. The sure answer is that we should intervene, whether that be in the company level, whether that be as groups of companies, and we should, what I've seen really work, locally in terms of making an impact is how the collective voice of companies can actually make a difference if you want to make an impact to the society. So really working on representation is the start, and making leaders accountable for it, where they really are measured. That's what we can do from our standpoint. The second would be involving communities. Nikki talked about it earlier. For example, more than 300 business resource groups or employee network groups in the world exist for my company, and their voice is what makes the company know what to do. Having that space where people can contribute to the strategy is actually key. Like, ask your LGBT community, ask your transgender community, what are we doing wrong? And finally, committing to listening to the community and making things happen. This will, of course, include education of on biases and proactive involvement of different business units, business leaders, because skills need to be the primary measure of career success, always. It shouldn't be anything related to one's gender identity. And like I said, there are a lot of ways to get started. From our perspective, we're happy to work with any organization who'd like to get started as well.
อาจารย์ณัฐวุฒิครับ on the policy level, because you involve with a lot of government and authorities, do you perceive they, let me ask this, maybe it's to be honest, are they really willing to make changes?
I still think at the governmental level, I mentioned we hardly touch upon this issue. Can I share with you one experience? When I worked with the Gender Equality Committee, there was a case we pursue on teachers, and I, on behalf of the team, will need to travel to meet with someone who in a management role and leadership role in a certain ministry to talk about what should we do? How can we empower government officers to understand this? In particular, those who work quite closely with younger generation and don't understand this issue. Seems to be they don't see this as an important matter in society, even though we have Gender Equality Act. But it hasn't really been put in place when it comes to the action on recruitment, retention, and human resources development in the governmental policy and office. And that's, to me, is the major constraint for trans men and women to enter into the work in the government sectors.
But I believe in driving forces that we can do on policy making level, on our individual level. People may think about why we need a transgender leadership. We believe that if you want to help someone along the spectrum of LGBT IQ plus, one of the person or one of the group that are very vulnerable and taking a lot of risks for their life is transgender. Or trans man too, but because trans man just coming up and coming out for us. But transgender already with Thailand for a long time, but nobody touched the issue about their life and their work at all. If we want to help people, we should help the people who need really a lot of help, like transgender people. And also one thing that I concern is we don't have really good programs to support them,
Forums like this, our transgender development, a series of trainings that will be running until April. One of the things that we did for the Philippine Financial Inter-Industry Pride is a master class on LGBT leadership, and it highlights the different experiences that we have as LGBT plus employees, and not just give us generic leadership trainings that a lot of companies already have. First, that should be incorporated in all development. So, like any other underrepresented minorities, we need to be understanding what the gap is in terms of the skills, if there's any. Another example is to talk about PTech, which is IBM's program, where we actually go to schools, to colleges, and mentor the students there, the LGBT community, women included, our transgender students, and really share to them the skills that they can already learn as early as college life, so that they can be encouraged that they can be in different types of industries and wherever they want to go. That said, it's important for companies that can, like IBM, for example, to really use our voice. We are out here to create forums like this with our civil society partners, spread the word and enact change, also through data. Another thing that we did last year was create an LGBT plus workplace inclusion survey for the members of our organization, where it's really an internal reference where we are as companies, as collective companies of 100 companies in the Philippines, based in the Philippines, targeting different aspects, transgender inclusion and leadership development included. So from that, having that kind of data and seeing the collective of the other different companies can encourage each other, right? So, yeah.
I'm now currently working in some of the corporate side of the company who really see this value. We even think about if we could be able to organize the Trans Career Day job, marketplace for the transgender in order to be a matching platform for each other. The trans talent, we could bridge the gap between the job seeker and the employer to see each other, to know each other, and to help grow each other.
I'm happy, Konmiki, you mentioned that, because this program that we're kicking off right now is developing our transgender candidates, right? But at the end of the day, it has to really end at something, and that is giving career opportunities to our transgender individuals. So I think that's a good culmination to things like this. Like everything that we do for the advocacy, I think it should end with impact in mind. What is our goal? It's really to increase transgender representation in corporates, in local companies, etc., in different industries. And we can do that together with at culminating trans career day, and happy to, I guess, partner with different organizations watching today for us to do that together.
And for your final words today, what you'd like to say?
Seeing people as people first, inclusion doesn't have to be just HR. It doesn't have to be just advocacy. It is an imperative, a strategy that we can all work on together.
My college of management at Mindon University is in the process of working with Bangkok Rainbow Organization on the development of brand new course on social business and focusing on how could we, as Kun Jess mentioned, I really love the idea. Kun Jess mentioned that if the ecosystem is not good, how could you really grow a nice bunch of roses, for example? You need to create this good ecosystem.
You need to be a door, not a wall for each other. Injustice, discrimination, why we need to spend our power and energy to fight for that. If we see the opportunity cost of turning that energy to building up to progress our economic, social development for our country, for our community, our society, I think that's the better. If we want to move longer, we need to move together.
I really like to see transgender leadership, because if you believe in leadership has no gender and anyone can be a leader. Thailand, all leader for the smile and for the diversity and inclusion. Have a great weekend ครับ สวัสดีครับ